The Young and the Restless spoilers. Thurdays full episodes June 12 in the ever-shifting world of Genoa City, where secrets, power struggles, and family ties run deep, the Abbott family was once again at the center of a brewing storm. The complex web of alliances, betrayals, and carefully guarded truths was about to unravel in ways none of them could have predicted. Lily Winters, ever the calm and composed figure amidst the chaos, found herself standing before an unexpected gift. The delicate box in her hands seemed innocuous, but the contents held deeper meaning, a gesture that could shift the tides of her life and the future of her family. As Lily slowly peeled back the wrapping, a sense of dread filled her chest. What was meant to be a simple, thoughtful present, perhaps a token of admiration, suddenly felt like an ominous prelude. The gift, wrapped meticulously with gold ribbons, revealed a letter and a fine piece of jewelry. An exquisite necklace that belonged to the Winters family's heritage. Her heart sank, realizing that this was no ordinary gift. It was an invitation, an unspoken message about the shifting dynamics in her life. The necklace, a symbol of her family's deep roots in Genoa City, now felt like a chain around her neck, reminding her of the looming decisions she had yet to make. Meanwhile, the tension between Holden Novak and Damian Kane was escalating to a breaking point. The two men, once allies in the complex world of corporate intrigue, now stood at opposite ends of a war for control over the future of the city. Their heated confrontation had been brewing for weeks, but now, it was inevitable. Holden, ever the loyal defender of the Abbott family, had grown weary of Damian's underhanded tactics and his willingness to align with the most dangerous forces in Genoa City. "Enough with the games, Damian." Holden's voice rang out, a sharp edge cutting through the air. "You've crossed the line one too many times. If you think you're going to get away with this, you're wrong." Damian, cool and collected as ever, leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "You think you have the upper hand, Holden, but you're just a pawn in a much bigger game. Don't mistake my ambition for weakness." He stood up, moving toward Holden with an almost predatory grace. "The Abbott family is crumbling. You're just too blind to see it." Holden's fists clenched, but he remained calm. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect my family, including taking you down. You're not the man you think you are, Damian. You'll regret this." As the tension between them boiled over, the rest of the Abbott family had their own concerns. Diane Jenkins and Jack Abbott were doing everything in their power to shield their son, Kyle, from the dangers that loomed on the horizon. Kyle, caught between the complexities of family loyalty and his own desires, had already made one of the most difficult decisions of his life, confronting Victor Newman, the man who had long sought to dominate the Abbott family. But it wasn't just about business anymore. Kyle's personal involvement in Victor's schemes had put him squarely in the line of fire. Diane and Jack knew this better than anyone. "Diane, Jack, we need to talk," Kyle began, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "Claire called me. She has news about Cole. He's being moved to a specialist hospital in Chicago to treat his pneumonia. He's still not in good condition, but they're trying to stabilize him." Diane and Jack exchanged concerned glances, their faces etched with worry. Jack, ever the protective father, couldn't hide the anxiety creeping into his voice. "What else? Why is this coming up now? Is Cole going to make it?" Kyle shook his head, his expression grim. "I don't know. It's all happening off-screen. We won't get the full details of what's going on with him, but I'm trying to stay focused. There's too much going on with Victor, Claire, and the family business. I just don't want anyone getting hurt." As Kyle tried to reassure his parents, the doorbell rang, and Diane jumped to her feet. Jack followed her closely, both feeling the weight of what was happening. Diane opened the door, and there, standing in front of them, was none other than Dumas, Victor's longtime rival. His presence in the Abbott home was never a good sign. With a heavy sigh, Diane motioned for Dumas to come inside. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice firm but laced with concern. We have enough problems as it is. Dumas, with his customary air of arrogance, stepped inside. I'm here to make sure everyone understands what's at stake, he said, his eyes scanning the room. And that includes you, Jack. Victor's moves are far from over. You and your family might want to start preparing for the storm ahead. Kyle, overhearing Dumas's ominous words, turned to his father. What does this mean, Dad? What's going on with Victor and the whole Dumas situation? Jack frowned, feeling the pressure of the mounting storm. Victor's been playing a dangerous game, Kyle. And I fear he's going to make his move soon. You need to be careful. Kyle nodded, but there was a sense of unease settling in his chest. He had already made his own moves, striking a deal with Victor, albeit one he kept vague for his family's sake. It was a precaution, one meant to protect both himself and Claire from Victor's influence. But he had no illusions about the danger he faced. Later that evening, as Kyle sat in his study, contemplating the conversations of the day, he received another call, this time from Claire. Her voice, though steady, carried a weight of urgency. Victor invited us to the Dumas estate, Claire informed him, her tone giving away little but the obvious tension beneath her words. He says it's time for us to meet face to face and solidify our position. He's giving us a choice, Kyle, be part of his world, or face the consequences. Kyle clenched his jaw, his anger bubbling beneath the surface. I know what Victor's trying to do, he muttered. But I'm not going to be manipulated. I made a deal, but that doesn't mean I trust him. You'll be safe with me, Claire. Don't worry. But as the days passed, Kyle's resolve was tested at every turn. Diane and Jack were growing more concerned about his involvement with Victor, and Kyle knew they were right to worry. Victor's reach was vast, and no one, not even Kyle, was immune to the dangers he posed. At the same time, Holden, ever the loyal defender of the Abbott name, found himself growing increasingly suspicious of Victor's true intentions. As he stood beside Jack, watching the wheels of betrayal and power slowly grind forward, Holden knew one thing for sure: the Abbott family's legacy was on the line, and nothing would stop him from ensuring its survival. If Kyle was to play his part in the Newman family's game, Holden would do everything in his power to make sure the Abbotts came out on top. As the Abbott family, Kyle, Claire, and their allies braced themselves for the storm that was Victor Newman's latest machination, one thing was certain: the final battle was about to begin. And in Genoa City, no one's future was ever truly secure. At the elite GCAC, a venue where power and influence collided in polished, marble-lined halls, the tension was palpable as Victor Newman sat in a private corner, his sharp eyes focused on Audra Charles, who stood before him. She had been reporting her progress for weeks now, but as Victor listened, the weight of their conversation felt heavier than ever. He had been waiting for something substantial, something that would secure his plan for the Abbott family's downfall. I trust you've been keeping up, Audra. Victor's voice was calm, but his gaze betrayed his impatience. Kyle's reputation, as you well know, is likely in tatters by now. He paused, watching her carefully, as if measuring her every response. Audra's lips curled into a smile, though there was no warmth in it. I assure you, Victor, Kyle is in a position to be easily taken down. His reputation is fragile, and I've made sure to use that to my advantage. She shifted slightly, her eyes gleaming with a cold calculation. However, I need to know, have you made sure that the invitations are secured for both Kyle and myself? The next step in this plan relies on us being there. Victor leaned forward, his expression unreadable. I've already taken care of it. You and Kyle are on the guest list for Dumas's estate. The question is, Audra, can you actually deliver? Audra's smile didn't fade. I can. You know I'm good at what I do. She paused for a moment, her gaze intense. If I can separate Kyle from Claire, if I can get him to choose the power and position I'm offering him, then you'll have exactly what you want, Victor. You'll finally have control over him, and Claire will be nothing but a distant memory. Victor studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "Make sure you do not disappoint me," he said, his voice low and threatening, yet tinged with an almost curious interest. "You're walking a fine line here, Audra. I've made my move with the invitation. It's up to you to make it count." Audra nodded, her confidence unwavering. "Leave it to me," she replied before turning to leave, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor of the GCAC. But just as she reached the door, a voice interrupted her. "Bonjour," came a familiar, teasing voice. Audra turned quickly, finding Holden Novak standing just behind her. He was leaning casually against the doorframe, a slight smirk on his face. "Congratulations on your invite to France. You must be very pleased," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Audra's eyes flashed with irritation, but she quickly masked it, keeping her composure. "Holden," she said coolly, "I don't know what you think you've overheard, but it's none of your business." Holden pushed himself off the doorframe and stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "Oh, I think I understand perfectly. You're not exactly subtle, Audra. I know what you're doing with Kyle, and I know who you're doing it for. Everything you've said to Victor, everything you've planned, it's all about making sure he's separated from Claire, isn't it?" Audra's lips parted in a feigned surprise. "You've misunderstood, Holden," she said, her voice laced with faux innocence. "You've been eavesdropping and making assumptions that are none of your concern. You should stop meddling in things that don't involve you." Holden's gaze hardened, his voice low. "Don't lie to me. I know what you're up to. You've been using your charm to worm your way into Kyle's life, all while keeping it a secret from everyone. But the truth is clear. You're trying to undermine his relationship with Claire. And that explains the flirting, doesn't it?" Audra's face hardened, and her tone grew icy. "You don't know what you're talking about. Now, I suggest you stop interfering before things get worse for you." Her words were sharp, a warning to Holden to back off. "If I were you, I'd mind my own business. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Holden stepped closer, his voice unshaken. "So, you're planning on charming Kyle, are you? Is that the strategy?" He paused, letting the question hang in the air. "Do you really think he'll fall for your games? Or are you just another pawn in Victor's dirty little scheme?" Audra's eyes narrowed dangerously, and she squared her shoulders. "You don't know the first thing about what I'm doing, Holden. You're way out of your depth." She turned sharply to leave, not waiting for his response. "I've had enough of this." Just as Holden was about to respond, the door opened and Kyle Abbott entered the room, his presence a welcome distraction from the confrontation that had been brewing. Kyle's eyes flicked between Holden and Audra, sensing the tension but not fully understanding its source. He turned to Holden, his voice laced with politeness. "Holden," Kyle said with a nod. "It's good to see you. I'm glad you're here." Holden gave him a knowing look before nodding. "I'll leave you two to it," he said, stepping away from the conversation with a final glance at Audra. "Don't do anything foolish, Kyle." Once Holden left, Kyle turned to Audra, his tone softening. "So, I've been thinking about your idea. It has potential. I think it's worth exploring." Audra's eyes gleamed with satisfaction as she moved closer to him. "I'm glad to hear that," she said with a smile. "I've been given a special opportunity, you know. An invitation to a private estate in France, a place with history and prestige. But here's the twist, we'll turn our visit with Dumas into something far more compelling. We can make it a contest, Kyle. A public showdown. Our competition, our way of asserting our dominance. Think of it as a royal battle, a way to show the world what we're capable of." Kyle's brow furrowed slightly, the idea intriguing but also a bit unsettling. "A competition?" he repeated, as if trying to grasp the full implications of her words. "And you think this will work?" Audra's eyes lit up with excitement. "Yes, absolutely. We'll turn this into a public spectacle, one that will make Dumas's little gathering seem insignificant." The world will be watching, and we will be in control. Imagine the power we'll have after this. It's the perfect way to make our mark. Kyle leaned back, his thoughts racing. This could work, he realized. It would be dangerous, but it could also give them the leverage they needed. But even as he considered her proposal, a nagging doubt lingered at the back of his mind. Was he really in control, or was he just another pawn in Victor's game? As the conversation continued, the air between them thickened with the weight of ambition and desire. In Genoa City, everyone had a price, and everyone had their own agenda. The real battle was only just beginning, and it would take more than just charm and manipulation to win it. Kyle and Audra were both playing a dangerous game, and the stakes had never been higher. At the bustling GCAC, where the world's elite mixed with sharp minds and sharper ambitions, the stakes had never been higher for Kyle Abbott. He had just finished a tense discussion with Audra Charles, a woman whose ambitions were as bold as they were dangerous. Her offer had lingered in the air, and Kyle knew he was on the verge of making a decision that could change everything. "I'm sorry, Audra," Kyle said, his voice measured, yet there was a faint edge of resolve. "I'll have to run this by my father. I'll be representing Jabot at the event in Nice. It's important to the company." His words were meant to distance himself from her scheming, to reassert his loyalty to his family's business and legacy. But Audra was not one to be easily brushed off. Her expression hardened with determination, and a knowing smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "You don't understand, Kyle," she said, her tone calm yet seductive. "I want you to face me, head to head. I want to compete with you, not against some corporate mask you're hiding behind." Her eyes gleamed with ambition, her words carrying a certain weight that Kyle could not ignore. "It would be a mistake not to engage with me." Victor, ever the shadow in the room, had been watching their exchange intently. His cold eyes never left Kyle, sensing the hesitation in the young man's voice. His interest in the outcome of this conversation was clear. If Kyle didn't rise to the challenge, Victor would consider it a failure. Kyle shook his head, his frustration mounting. "I wasn't invited, Audra. If you're thinking I'll just show up at Dumas's estate without an invitation, you're wrong. That's not how this works." Audra stepped closer, her voice softening, but her eyes still burning with intensity. "I can get you in. I can bring an extra person. You just need to trust me. Do you really think you can stay away from this? Think about it, Kyle. This is your chance to show everyone what you're truly made of. To prove you're not just your father's son, but a force to be reckoned with in your own right." Kyle hesitated, the weight of her words pressing on him. It was tempting. The allure of stepping into the spotlight, of taking control and showing the world his true potential, was undeniably powerful. Yet, something within him recoiled. "I'll think about it," he said, his voice hardening. "But don't expect me to act without considering the consequences." He turned to leave, his mind racing. But just as he stepped toward the door, Victor's voice broke the silence, his words a reminder of the stakes. "You'll do what's best for your family, Kyle," Victor said, his tone laced with icy resolve. "But remember, if you want to play in this game, you need to play by my rules." As Kyle exited, Audra stood still, her face a mask of determination. She was playing a dangerous game, and she knew it. She had seen the flicker of uncertainty in Kyle's eyes, and she wasn't about to let him back away from this challenge. Her plan was set, and she would do whatever it took to ensure that Kyle would be hers. Both in business and in life. Meanwhile, across town, Damian Kane was in a completely different kind of business, a far more personal one. He had been working with Lily Winters for some time now, and his gift to her was both an apology and a gesture of goodwill for the promises they had made. He walked into her office with a small box in hand, his smile warm but carrying an undercurrent of seriousness. "Lily," he began, his voice soft, "I wanted to thank you for keeping your word on our arrangement. You've been more than patient with me." Lily looked up from her work as Damian placed the small, neatly wrapped gift on her desk. She gave him a smile, unsure of what to expect. "Thank you, Damian," she replied, her voice polite, yet there was a hint of curiosity in her tone. She opened the box, her eyes widening as she pulled out a beautiful hardcover book titled The History of Jazz. Her fingers lingered on the cover, a small smile forming on her lips. This is one of my father's favorite books," she said softly, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "I remember when Devin and I were going through my father's things after he passed away. We found so many of his things, but this book, it was missing. I never thought I'd see it again." Damian's face softened as he watched her. "I know how much that means to you," he said, his voice sincere. "Consider it a token of my appreciation for everything you've done." Lily nodded, touched by the gesture. "This is a wonderful gift." "Thank you, Damian. It means more than you know." However, as Lily held the book, her thoughts shifted, and she mentioned the conversation she had had with Devin and Nate Hastings earlier that day. "I spoke to Devin and Nate," she said, her tone more businesslike. "They're both open to bringing Holden into Winters. We're moving forward with the plan." Damian's expression shifted slightly. "Holden," he muttered under his breath, as if the name tasted sour in his mouth. "He didn't take the news of being fired too well, did he?" Lily nodded, understanding where Damian's thoughts were heading. "No, he didn't. But Holden's loyalty to the Abbott family is unwavering. We'll need to make sure he's properly integrated into the new team. He'll be a good asset to us." Damian's lips curled into a thin smile. "Perhaps. But perhaps you and Holden should be in separate departments. He and I, well, we don't exactly see eye to eye. There's a lot of tension between us." At that moment, the door to the office swung open, and Holden stepped in, his presence as commanding as ever. His sharp eyes immediately locked onto Damian. "What's this I hear about not seeing eye to eye?" Holden asked, his voice a mix of amusement and challenge.